Hello and good morning to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Toni Hart makes New Haven tick morning and night. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Welcome, Mayor Hart.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well.
But later, we're going to be joined by Mike Piscatelli, we're told. The Economic Development Administrator has been involved in so many interesting news developments in town just over the past week.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about that. And Ben Burke was supposed to join him, who is the mascot of the New Haven economy, right? Mr. C-Click Fix. Also, best T-shirt, even though they designed it for skinny millennials. They're fun to wear.
Oh, really?
I get comments every time I C-Click Fix T-shirt.
Oh, really? It looks good on you, Paul?
Yeah, no, they like the T-shirt. Where'd you get that T-shirt? And we're gonna if you have a question for the mayor, please feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. Just watch us there on New Haven Independent page, and you'll see the video. Thanks to Gateway Community College, Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's week show. So, how's your weekend, Mayor Hart?
It was good. It was good. It was a great weekend. It was a little hot yesterday, but
It melted ice.
I think it did. It melted people too a little bit.
See, ICE was the Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Okay.
It did melt people. Anyway, ICE was supposed to come into some cities in America.
Right?
Can you imagine working for Donald Trump?
No.
So here you have his hardcore go-get-em ICE guys who want to round up every immigrant in the country, so they're psyched that he's letting them loose. And then he broadcasts it to the whole country. We're going on this day to these 10 cities. So, of course, they didn't go to most of the cities because that's tipping people off. So they're not going to be there to be caught. Now, I'm glad about that. But I'm just saying. But
interesting strategy.
So we're not on the list, apparently. But there is not really a list, is there?
Well, evidently there was a list because I've seen that they are targeting those cities. But the Department of Homeland Security does put out a list every once in a while of cities that they think are problem cities or what they call sanctuary cities. So,
well, were they targeting sanctuary cities or cities where a lot of people had recently stayed when they weren't supposed to? And their point was they wanted to rip parents from their kids to put the pressure and sometimes take the kids as collateral, right?
Oh gosh, that sounds terrible.
I mean, that's what they
Does
said.
Does it sound like a different century to you?
It does. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, this is actually kind of an emotional issue for me because of my background, but yeah.
Yeah, well, for all of us who
it is crazy.
It's.
So were you ready in case they were coming, or did you think they weren't going to come?
Well, one of the things that our police force has as its general orders is to not cooperate. We're enabled to have a police department because of state law, not federal law. And so, yes, when it comes to crime, we will cooperate and work with the federal government. But when it comes to immigration enforcement, that's not our job.
Right.
So we don't have the ability to do that. The general statutes don't put that within our purview, and so we will never be doing that.
Did you think they might be coming? Were you ready in case they came this weekend?
I think that we're always ready in New Haven.
A lot of political figures put out statements. I want to read you one I thought was pretty good. One of the public figures said, "I suspect recent ICE threats are more about sowing fear, terrorizing certain residents, dividing communities, and distracting the American people from the Trump administration's deplorable record on other issues than it is about immigration enforcement." Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. I think that's the statement that we put out.
It is, because it ended up, as long as I'm mayor, New Haven will continue its open arms tradition for those fleeing oppression in other countries, for those seek a better life here.
Right. I just can't believe sometimes what it is that we're doing as a country. And, I know that there were years ago when we were young and trying to contemplate what was going on during the Second World War with people and how it got to these horrible extent and why good people didn't say anything much about it. And look at what's happening here.
Yeah. You? What about the tweets?
Well,
the president tweeted that that the four women in the four liberal lefty women should go back where they're from.
I think that's absolutely horrible. And what has happened to our country? Why aren't people up in arms about that?
I'll tell you why. I think.
Why's that?
Okay, so picture this. A Politician gets accused, has a credible accusation of rape. Someone says, you raped me. A prominent woman says, the male raped me. And the person's defense is A, nah, not my type, but B, the person says, I never hung out with her. And then photographs emerge that show that he's lying. So therefore, the accused person who's in a position of power has now no defense against an accusation that he raped somebody. Have we heard about this much? This is what was accused of Donald Trump 2 weeks ago. And he really presented that statement. I never was around her, and then all these pictures pop up. So in other words, no longer did he have credibility as someone. He had no defense against the charge. So now the president of the United States, we know he had all these other incidents that he's even sort of admitted that would have killed any other politician, like paying off a porn star in the affair with all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But rape's a crime. He didn't really have a defense. So how does he get away with all this other stuff? I think it kind of starts with that. How does he get away with that?
Well, you have to wonder, does everyone think he's so special that he doesn't have to abide by any laws? And he did say he thought he could kill somebody, and
yeah, on Fifth Avenue. He did say Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
So he did know his location. He had the territory marked out. Okay, it's Mayor Monday, and you're here at WNHH FM 103.5 FM live streamed at NewHavenIndependent.org. Fantasy Island, my favorite name lately for a police operation. City police worked with state and federal police to round up the Island Brothers.
Yep.
Now, I didn't know the Island Brothers were still around. That's back in our day, right? When community policing started, they rounded up the gang at Q Terrace through intelligence who were running major kind of murder and drugs. And people waited for a long time, a couple shifts. They come back, and this doesn't always happen because sometimes they age out. But it turned out that some of these shootings lately, we've had an uptick in shooting. Though not as dramatic as people think, 4 more than last year at this time. And last year was a record year for low. But, there have been some people upset for good reason. And it turns out they rounded up 25 people on federal charges, meaning serious time awaits them. And they were from the Island Brothers. They'd come out of jail. Some of these people were in their 40s and I think 50s.
Well, if you think about the people who have been shot or even killed as it relates to this kind of crime, they are all older. They're in their late 20s and they go all the way up to their mid-40s. So it's not the young gangbangers of old. I think we've done a really good job of wrapping services
focused on
around
the teens. You the teenagers. All that, yeah.
Yep.
It's so interesting about them coming out. Because I know they're always watched when they came out. Like R2, I remember when that happened about 10 years ago. People were keeping an eye on that, or 8 years ago. But I hadn't quite seen a case like this where the actual gang members came out in their 40s and were doing it again and got caught again. That was kind of interesting.
Well, it seems like corrections doesn't correct.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a big debate right now.
Yeah.
And I love Fantasy Island.
Yeah.
Because I like thinking Carl Jacobson kind of has that tough guy face, even though he's not a tough guy. He's the assistant chief who oversees this stuff.
Right.
I love seeing him as Ricardo Montalban on Fantasy Island, taking us a tour of what they did.
We got to get him that white jacket.
So I think tomorrow night, the police commission is going to approve him, Renee Dominguez, and Herb Sharper as our new assistant chiefs. So we got the team in place.
We've got the team in place, and I'll swear them in, I believe, Friday evening.
Swearing him in Friday evening?
I think so, yeah.
And I don't want to ask you to repeat everything you said last week, but this continues the trend of promoting from within the department. We're saying that we no longer need outside people to come in. We don't need the Beach Boys, as we call them, the California assistant chiefs. We don't need the Chicago team of 3 assistant chiefs. I don't know what cars they had, but not surfboards. But we really are the chief, the assistant chief, 2 chiefs in a row. We're going from the inside. And even though our ranks are depleted, we still have enough talent, we feel, to grow in the department.
We absolutely do. And look, every week, someone from another city in America comes to look at what we're doing in New Haven because it's so effective and try to learn from us. We've even had people come from other countries to look at our policing style and why it yields such a great result. So I'm really proud of the work that they do. And yes, we're down officers, but we are going to, I think that the posting will close probably by the end of the week. And
that's for new officers. Yeah.
For new
so there's
officers.
still time to apply.
Yep. There's still time to apply.
And actually on those tours, I do think it's Carl Jacobson who takes them on the tours.
Oh, okay.
So he might have a Ricardo Montalban future. He does
get him that white jacket.
He narrates in the car when the people from, whether it's Sweden, I think, or Milwaukee, wherever they're coming from, he's showing them, here's, where we meet with folks here. And
Right. No, do a phenomenal job, and Carl Jacobson has been extraordinary under multiple chiefs now, and I'm so happy that he gets an opportunity to actually lead as an assistant chief.
So he's been working on the dirt bike problem, which I think we all agree has no simple solution.
No simple.
In New
one.
Haven, we've decided we can't just chase after the cops because more people get hurt, the cops and the public.
Right.
But it's hard. Some people think we get drones. It's hard. I heard there was a big dirt bike gathering and motorcycle gathering that shut down Forbes Avenue for a few hours this weekend, Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I guess it's still going on. So.
It's still going on. You know, the kids get the bikes, and they tend to be younger, and they like to ride. I'd really love for us to find a place for them to do that, and so that at least they have a place that is sanctioned for that activity. So
some of them like to give us the middle finger, right? They like to do it, saying I'm running away from the cops, you can't get me. They take the videos of it.
That's not nice. Yeah.
No, I know. I mean, so I think part of the thrill is that they're doing what they're not allowed to do.
You think so?
You don't think
it's
so?
It's not just the wind through your hair and all of
that. It's that helmet. Well, if they wear Honda's watching, Smith's watching, Jesse Phillips, Sylvia Cooper, Sal DeCola, Scott Healy, who's back in town.
Oh, okay.
And Jack Kramer. Nice to hear from all of you. Thanks for checking in on Mayor Monday, which you're listening to at WNHH-FM 103.5 live, streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Mayor Tony Harper's in the house, and we do have Mike Piscatella coming soon.
He's coming soon, and I believe that
Ben Berkowitz is in that. And that's the T-shirt.
Oh, let me
You're
see
the
T-shirt.
T-shirt.
Okay, come on, Ben. Let's see the T-shirt.
Ben has a T-shirt that even though you see,
all right,
it's designed, and you'll see it on screen soon. It's designed for a physique like that.
Okay.
So it looks kind of ridiculous when I wear it, but I do get comments everywhere saying,
"Where
do I get that T-shirt?"
Instead,
Not of the shirt. Okay, well, we'll get to that in the next. We'll give you a little taste of what's to come. Anything to come aboard, Ed, tonight? They're doing deficit mitigation. Any new ideas? How we're going to get $10-20 million to disappear in the deficit?
Well, I'm sure that they're going to take a look at all of our contracts and see if there are some that we don't need that we could actually pull in house. I know that they're looking at a tuition issue for sending towns, but if we decide that we want to do tuition, we've got to notify those towns a year in advance.
Now, you knew my next question. Will you sneak in at my notes here? Okay. Because we've written some stories. Christopher Peak has written some stories.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of taken a stand, and there are definitely two sides to this, so some people are very upset with us. He's highlighting the ways that people in New Haven don't feel good about the bargain we struck a generation ago on magnets.
Mm-hmm.
So the state wanted to desegregate schools. So they said, we'll give you all sorts of money if you make magnet schools. And then people from the region come, so we have city and suburb together. And that was supposed to address black and white, get more white kids and black kids. Of course, it was much more complicated than that because people of color in the suburbs want to come to the city because we're better at dealing with them.
Right, exactly.
They feel out of fish out of order sometimes in public school systems in the suburbs. And other reasons. So we found out in our system, because we get penalized if we don't have enough suburban students.
Right.
We're being careful, which we need to be because people leave in the middle of the year. So even though we need to have 25% suburban students, we reserve 35% of the seats for suburban students in case someone drops out. So we took the extreme example. We took a woman who moved from New Hallville to Amity, Beverly Hills, my favorite name for neighborhood in Haven.
Mm-hmm.
She moved to Beverly Hills so her kids could go to Davis, which is a magnet. Both kids keep getting turned down the lottery and there are empty seats. And the reason is and I understand, there are no villains here. They need to keep those open so that they don't get over the 75% line of local kids and then get cheated by this, don't get the money from the state. So a lot of people feel, especially of color in New Haven, we built all these big schools, our kids should be able to go. The other side of the argument is that was the deal. We got $1.7 billion to rebuild the schools. Most of that came from the state. A lot of it was magnets. And that part of the deal was we'd have urban and suburban together. And some people think that integration ideal is so important that both sides, all sorts of people, city and suburb, black and white, benefit when we learn together. And then there's a reexamination in the black community among some who say that's fine as an ideal, but the issue isn't that we need a black kid next to a white kid. It's that, well, they would like to have more black teachers, but in general, it's about just having enough resources at every school so you feel you don't have to move. Long-winded. What do you think?
Well, I do think that we're held accountable for achieving something that requires that other districts participate in, and I think that's what makes it hard. And And actually, they get a benefit if their kids participate.
Right, that's the other story we wrote. They get reimbursed under the educational cost sharing formula, even if their kid comes here. Although we do get some other money, right?
We do get magnet dollars, and on top of the ECS dollars that we already get. And I think that the real issue is having there be some sort of, beyond what they get in terms of ECS, incentive for the sending school district to send more kids. But years ago, when this program first started, they weren't looking at race; they were just looking at suburban participation. We put a bill in this year to try to go back to the way that it was when it first started, because it's actually tightened over the years and defined it more on racial lines. When I think that the most important thing is economic integration, shouldn't really necessarily be race. And so that would mean that kids, no matter their race, from more middle class kids coming into the system would make a big difference. And we were able to do that and meet our numbers prior to that. But I also think
I'm sorry, I don't totally understand that. So, did we get this passed this session?
no, there was a compromise which basically said they won't hold us harmless for not meeting the formula that we're supposed to meet. That's my understanding of it.
For 2 years or something.
For 2 years, and but I think that ultimately New Haven. See, this is all based upon Sheff versus O'Neill, and one of the things that I noticed when I was appropriations chair for the Senate is that we don't get the same benefit with, say, Sheff versus O'Neill that Hartford gets. And while we took on some of the responsibility, we weren't in that case in the same way. And so that's why at the beginning of the program, it was just suburban students, not based on racial isolation. And I think we should go back to that. And if we go back to that, then I think that we will meet our numbers more readily and we'll actually get to have the 75%, because that's the real issue. I asked the superintendent to show us, to track how often we met the 25%. And we seldom, I don't think we've ever met it at any school. Some schools were very close, but many schools were not. And so it would seem to me making it 35%, which they've made it, makes it almost impossible for us to fully fill schools in our district, in these schools that many parents would like to have their children attend. And so I argue that we should use the 75-25, not the 35-65.
Okay, because you think, and then we do have these 2 years hold harmless.
Yeah.
I have a deeper question about magnets. So I've been thinking about this because one guy really attacked me this weekend saying, you guys are, and no, it's fair argument, says you're like Joe Biden, you're questioning integration and busing. And I was thinking, I don't think I am. I don't think people who are examining it are. It's just that conditions change. So right now, what busing does, it doesn't integrate our schools. I think that because magnet schools like charters started out as a smaller idea to have alternatives that were experimental to improve all schools. But when you have a whole system based on that, everybody kind of feels desperate to get their kid into somewhere that's not in their neighborhood because that's the only way they feel they're going to get a good school. And now when you have kids riding buses 2 hours a day within New Haven to go to West Rock Academy, not West Rock Academy, to go to the other school in West Rock, the Comer School.
Right, Riders. I think it is.
No.
West Rock's Riders Academy.
Yeah, but the one up the street. Anyway, the
Okay, that one,
on the
okay.
other side. Anyway, so that people are riding up to 2 hours a day within the city because their parents feel they need to get them these different magnets. Because we had an idea and it was well attentioned a generation ago that parents want this choice. So let's make all these schools magnets. But is there an alternative to have every school be a good school so that you don't feel you need to have bust all around town, separate from the racial integration issue?
Well, I think that's
Because it's
the
a
real
majority-minority school system anyway.
That's the real challenge. And the real question is, where are we in paying off those bonds? And at what point are we relieved of this obligation? And I think it should be soon.
Could we get relieved of it anyway, or is that reneging?
I think we could get relieved of it. It's just a matter of getting it passed in the General Assembly.
What about people who say we don't want to be relieved of it, that everyone benefits, that you go to Metropolitan Business Academy and they have incredible discussions about race and cities and America because you have the kid from Brantford sitting next to the kid from New Hallville?
Well, I think that one of the things then, if we don't get rid of it, then we need to loosen and take away the what I would consider the sanction of not meeting those numbers that, by the way, we've never met.
Yeah. This stuff is so
You know?
complicated and so interesting to look at. Yeah. And then we're doing that on Mayor Monday. I guess that's it for Board of Ed today. But I'm sure we'll have more in future weeks.
Sure.
I guess Mac P is coming in soon, but we were going to talk about Tweed. You want a big decision last week, a federal decision, U.S. Court of Appeals. It was kind of a surprise. I didn't know it was coming.
Well, we knew that we had appealed. We just didn't know when the judge would make his finding.
Now, what it's saying is that a state law that prevents us from expanding our runway at Tweed, New Haven, is superseded by federal law, and that the federal government does want us to expand for a number of reasons our runway so that we could accommodate more jets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it stands.
I mean, it basically is saying that it's a jurisdictional issue, really. Does the state have jurisdiction over runways, or is it a federal jurisdiction? And I think we've always felt that it was a federal jurisdiction, and that's why we went to court.
Mm-hmm.
And at least we lost the first case, and then when we appealed it at the appellate level federally, we won this case. And it's our sense that even if the case were prepared to go to the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court would likely not take it up.
Boy, they got enough big things on their plate. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know how they would rule, because the conservative majorities are no longer reflexively state rights. Sort of the left side of the pendulum now is arguing for states to experiment and not be bound by what originalist, constitutionalist, conservative judges are now using the federal government to impose their views on us. It's kind of interesting.
And, I think that oftentimes people think we're expanding Tweed. We're really not. We're staying within the current fence. All we're doing is repaving the runway safety areas.
So that more jets can come in.
So that jets, the sort of regional jets can come in, which, by the way, are quieter than the propeller planes that come in now. And, everybody is so concerned. A lot of people think that the solution is to get rid of commercial air flights. And the reality is, if we do that, you're going to have more of those propeller planes and all the noise that people complain about, all of the sort of concern around pollution that people complain
including
about.
Noise pollution,
is going to be more likely if we are not a commercial airport.
Mm-hmm.
The more commercial flights that we have in, the more the general aviation public will go to other general aviation airports.
The politics of this is so interesting, because I don't know if you took a poll in that neighborhood in the Morris Cove whether people would be for or against the expansion. But there's no question that the people who are against it, and they have they have valid and sincere reasons, they are the ones who are heard. They're the ones who are motivated to speak up about it.
Sure.
So much so that their representatives, state senators, Martin Looney, State Rep Al Paolillo, and State Senator Len Pisano, are against expansion. And they're pretty influential at the Capitol.
I would say.
So they're asking the governor and the attorney general to have the state appeal the ruling.
Mm-hmm.
So where does that stand?
I spoke to Attorney General Tong about an appeal. I urged him, just like they urged him to. I urged him not to. And he said that, he would be working with his team to look at whether or not the finding by the appellate court in some way limits our sense of states' rights beyond just this case.
Oh, he's worried about precedent.
Right. And so if
we want to be a sanctuary state, right? Is that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that he will take a look at it from that perspective. He'll also look at the cost of mounting this appeal and make a decision there. So he did not promise one way or the other.
The politics are tough, because as Attorney General, he needs to get legislation passed by the legislature. So there are the two most important people in William Tong's universe when he wants to pass laws like creating an Office of Civil Rights within his department are Marty Looney and Len Fasano, who are on the other side of this.
Right.
On the other hand, you were an early endorser of his, and the business community in New Haven is it's a jihad to have that, to have more flights.
And I believe that the governor would like to see more flights And it
Oh, he's a big believer in the airport.
right, to be easier to get in and out of New Haven and this part of the state. Think about what it's like in the middle of the day to try to go to LaGuardia or,
I wouldn't even
Kennedy.
consider it
Well, I know.
unless I had 2 days
people would.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch. Let's get Ben Berkowitz on the screen. Ben Berkowitz is the founder and CEO of SeeClick Fix. Basically, in my opinion, the symbol of everything that's gone right in New Haven almost for the last 10, 20 years, because it was a very successful company that's now worldwide, started here, linking citizens to government, solving a problem through tech and through modern company. Big, employs a lot of people, and is also one of the great corporate citizens in town. I mean, the reason we're cleaning up trails by the Mill River is partly because of people from SeeClick Fix and all that. So, Ben, we're going to get you on the screen as soon as Sam can do that. You got your T-shirt, so people are going to see that T-shirt when you come in. What does the back say? I forget.
Click Fix.
You see, I love that the front doesn't.
Yeah, me too.
And I love that it has a heart and a wrench.
I like that when I run into people and they don't know what it is, they try to guess what it is.
And
Kind of
so,
fun. Yeah.
but you did tailor it for millennial bros.
Uh,
Just let's be honest here, okay?
if you are calling me a millennial, I will accept that. I
Okay.
will accept bro if you will also call me a millennial.
Okay. So, but
I
it's
mean,
a
I
great
am
shirt.
male.
I do think
identify as
and I
male.
think it's a great shirt.
Thank you.
And so let's talk about the airport, Ben, because I have a feeling you're with the mayor on this one,
Probably.
because you want there to be more flights to
Let's
Tweed,
see.
right?
Do we want an airport?
Yes, we do.
I think we
Okay.
agree.
That works.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
And what's interesting to me is when I bring people from both sides into this studio, they both believe it so strongly. This is an intense religious belief, in my opinion.
Hmm.
The business community has thought for decades, if we could just get more flights, regular service we've had, and then it hasn't lasted, Chicago, Washington, it's going to create jobs. And there's no question that, we want to get more conference building business and all that. So that would definitely help.
Yeah.
And a lot of us just think it's convenient. It's nice to be able to fly from there. And you had studies that show that in other communities, it's easier to get to the airport and all that. And the people who live, they feel so strongly saying we're subsidizing an airport that's never made money. They have brought flights in the past, because the truth is, and people get so intense about this, they don't point out that if you get everything you want on the airport, you're not going to have more flights than were determined in that 2009 state agreement that was overturned. It's not about getting more flights than we're allowed to bring in.
Right.
But they say every time you did that, it didn't last. The market's just not there. But we live here, and it's a protected wetland, that it hurts, and the quality of life is down. So what's your take as a business person? Because you fly a lot, right? And you have people
Yeah.
come into town to see you. This is an important part of your business.
Yeah, I do. And I said to Lori Mack last week. Well,
From WNPR,
yeah,
one
from
of our favorite
WNPR,
reporters.
tweeted that, and she was surprised to hear that a huge part of SeeClick Fix's early business was built on me getting on airplanes that originated and returned to and from Tweed.
Oh, really? You were flying out?
Absolutely, I was on the prop planes all the time.
So you're less neurotic than I am, because I'm always worried about that connection. Since we're last in line, that you go to Philly, but everything has to go right. There can't be a storm in Hawaii or Chicago or Florida that messes all the air traffic.
Yeah, I mean winter is the worst, but I have only been rerouted once on the way
Really?
back in, and it was because the pilot could not figure out how to turn on the runway lights. Which
Good
is
thing
just
he didn't fly.
yeah. So we went to land. He couldn't get the runway lights on, and we ended up in Westchester. And they gave us a shuttle back. It would be the same as if we flew to any of the other airports deliberately.
Well, Westchester's a lot closer.
Yeah.
And you don't get all that New York traffic.
And once on the way out, we had to take a flight out of Hartford, but once outbound, once inbound, and I've never had a disruption otherwise.
Mhm.
I've also, I guess, in the last 15 years, Philadelphia has changed tremendously. It's an amazing connecting airport.
Meaning it's gotten better.
Yeah, it's great.
See, I
And
haven't done this for 15 years. I remember going way to the
Flying
end. It took
into
me all
Philadelphia-
week to get to the other terminal.
I think people have the perception that flying
Little
into
exaggeration.
Philadelphia is like flying into Chicago, where literally every flight in Chicago that's rescheduled, right? So that's tough, but it's a good connecting airport. So that said, there were certain places that were really easy and inexpensive to get to, and they're places you wouldn't expect. So like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, any of the major airports where you could just fly through Philly and pop over. The layover was only an hour at the most, usually. Usually didn't have delays. So if you did, there's more flights going.
And I just get right in the mic, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And so for me, I think for a lot of people it was historically a perception issue that you couldn't fly into Tweed consistently or inexpensively.
So how will it affect your business? And like you were involved with the people, even though you didn't end up locating there at District, which is the big success story now, the newer one
Yep.
of our great new tech campus and innovation center in Fairhaven. How would it affect your own business there, honestly?
I mean, so I only needed, for the most part, to go to really major airport hubs back when I was traveling a lot. But my coworkers now are going to conferences that are all over the country. It is harder to get to through Philadelphia sometimes. It doesn't necessarily have the best route. And you need me to adjust the mic, don't you?
No, just talk into it. That's all. Now, what about coming in? Like Mike Piscatelli,
Yeah,
who's
so that
the
was-
economic development director for Mayor Harp, he keeps talking to me about the barriers to getting conference business and now having enough hotel rooms, which we're working on. Right, we got a lot of hotels coming on, and but how important is it coming in?
So I think that is the bigger thing. I think that's right, and that's what I was going to jump to, is that we have had trouble with our annual conference that we hold here in getting people to get to New Haven. Some of that's perception, again, but some of that is real. And it's, Hartford is just far enough away that it makes people second guess whether they're going to make a trip if they can't fly in and get there in 15 minutes.
Jaywan Carter writes in, I was in a newly soundproofed home in Morris Cove, and the noise was not annoying. Outside was loud, but it's every so often. Now, that's an issue you brought up, Mayor Harp. Hello, Mike Piscatelli, Economic Development Administrator for the city, is joining us on Mayor Monday at WNHH FM 103.5, live streamed at newhavenandbend.org. Mayor Harp, you talked about how there were community benefits, that you guys got federal money to soundproof people's homes, everybody's homes who wanted it. Now there's talk that for political reality, if you're going to want to get the support of the state senators who are opposing you, you're going to have to come up with more. What more can there be for the neighborhood?
One of the things that the soundproofing goes to the 65 decibel level, and we probably really need to get to 75. And so one of the things that we're working on is we hope through perhaps the bond package. I know that the legislature's
Debt diet. We're on a debt diet in the state.
Well, I know, but they're going to do some things. And so we're hoping that we can get enough to do up to 75 decibels there. And there are other things as well around traffic calming that we are doing now and we hope to improve upon. But those things are really important. I think if we could get out to 75, most of the people who closely abut the airport, once you go into those, it's amazing. When you go into a house that's had this work done, you hear nothing.
What about one woman talks, Rachel, she talks about going on her back porch and having coffee in the morning. So she says soundproofing isn't going to change that. Is the answer. You talked the other day about how that airport was there before anyone ever bought or built a house there.
Right. It was part of an old farm that was back, probably in the 1700s. This family owned it. And it was built in 1920.
Yeah.
And so
planes were louder in the old days.
And in the old days, and probably more dangerous. But at any rate, almost all of those houses were built in the 40s and the 50s. And so the airport was already there.
Well, Ben Bergwitz and I live in Westville. And while I'm agnostic in all this, can we agree that if Morris Cove can live with the airport, we will embrace concerts at the tennis center? Traffic, noise. The truth is, on Friday night when there used to be concerts there at the Yale Bowl, I'd sit outside on the porch and listen for free. I feel like I was stealing some Paul Simon.
I was going to say, you're saying Paul Simon can finally play?
He played that one time for Yale's birthday at the Yale Bowl. It was a Friday night. We were all listening outside. It sounded really good. But I mean, I think that in urban neighborhoods, there are certain assets for the city that you kind of agree. I don't want to take a side on the specifics of this because I feel like there are good points on both sides. But I do think when you're in a city, like Betsy Clark was an alderwoman. She used to say to her people in downtown who were complaining that there were trucks downtown outside their apartments. She said, it's a city.
Yeah.
If you don't want to live somewhere where people deliver stuff because there's a lot of stuff going on, don't live in a city.
You're going to where I was going with this too, which when you were setting up the kind of the religious debate, I think to diffuse that a bit, we each have to think about our neighborhood as you're doing, your own neighborhood, and what your neighborhood means to you, but also how it is a critical component to the rest of the city, right?
We're part of the city.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think if we're going to really talk about the thing that impacts Westville the most, it's that we hold that affects the rest of the city. It's actually Whaley Avenue, right? So like the village deals with Whaley as this major artery to connect the suburbs and the valley into
Mhm.
downtown, and
And we
that
make-
has
and
real.
we
I mean,
really
way
stopped them
more
with the show,
people
yeah.
have lost life, I would
That's
assume,
true.
on Whaley Avenue than
That's true.
or have been disrupted by the noise of Whaley Avenue just on a daily
But
basis.
again, don't
right?
move to Westville Village to live if you don't want to hear
right.
people doing stuff.
That's right. And we're not going to shut down Whaley Avenue. I'm going to try. I haven't figured out how.
We've
yet,
slowed
but-
it down quite
Yeah,
a bit. Well, Mike
exactly.
Piscatella, you're the Economic Development Administrator of the city. Thanks for joining us on Mayor Monday. You've been involved in so many interesting news stories just in the last week. I actually think that just about everything interesting that happens in New Haven goes through Mike Piscatelli's office.
Agreed.
But what about the belief that this really does mean business and flights? You and I have talked, Mike, about the need for more hotel rooms. You've been successful at that. We got hotel rooms coming on so that people don't have to stay in Milford or Brantford when they have a conference in New Haven. You're still trying to work on getting enough conference facilities so that the conferences can take place here. How does Tweed fit into this in dollars and cents and jobs?
So first, let's go back to the point made earlier concerning the number of flights and how it impacts the neighborhoods. I think it was an important conversation and one that we need to work harder on.
If you can get close to the
explaining
mic,
and
yeah.
also getting to a proper understanding over the number of commercial flights, of which we've always sort of forecast about 30 commercial flights, the 2 to 3 hub cities plus Florida, relative to the overall number of movements at the airport. So if you go down there, a lot of the movements today, and well over 1,000, are all related to the non-commercial flights, the GA, the practice flights,
And they're
all of
noisier.
that. So one of the things that's very important in this next phase of the project, if you will, is getting to the right balance of what's a commercial flight versus a non-commercial flight. So we're respectful of the neighbors and the fact that if you're outdoors, you're still hearing these planes. What you're hearing now are so many non-commercial flights, which doesn't help us on the economic development side. And that's what, to your point about helping out on the hotels, getting conference space, allowing companies to grow and keep their sales teams in New Haven. I think your sales team is still here.
Yeah.
But we've lost. So as companies move and they start to scale up, there's an incredible pressure first on, say, the venture or capital side to pull out of New Haven to maybe a more talent-rich environment. And then on the
I.e.,
sales
go to
side,
Silicon Valley where there are more engineers.
or Cambridge
and,
or
and Peter
somewhere.
Salve has to help us out on that one. He's trying.
And then the second part is access, actually being a place where you're attracting talent here, and then also where your talent can go, your talent out of town and go see people.
So, Mike,
and
this
really
is
pitch the
interesting.
product.
I maybe haven't paid enough attention. I hadn't heard people talk about sales forces before. So, company grows. You have salespeople, all trade now. We're city states. We're nation cities now. We're doing trade with the world and other states on our own. You're saying that there are real jobs we've lost because of not having a good airport, enough air service for sales forces. And we get to that stage, we can't keep them.
And we've learned that almost from our people on the ground. We've got a chair of our BZA, member of our development commission. These are people actually who were in those jobs, and they would use the United flight quite a bit to actually get to places. There's a whole band there of sales teams that are no longer based in New Haven.
All right, Pastor Arlene E. Henry, thank you for listening. Pastor Henry says, I'm so happy and excited about being able to travel out of Tweed New Haven Airport. Traffic is just awful trying to get to Bradley's. We have missed our planes a few times. So you get a vote from Arlene Henry. So how are you feeling about this, Mike? Obviously, you were happy with the ruling. How realistic? There was a very good article in the rest of USA about all the steps that have to happen before it can actually be extended. Do you think this means it's going to get extended? If so, when?
I think that we all came away with the same reaction after the verdict. It's another step in the process. It's a journey. It provides the
So that's
basis,
what some people say
which
about
was really
cigars.
important. It provides the basis to actually start a more constructive conversation with the neighbors, which leads to the permitting process, both at the FAA and at the state level, to actually get to the runway project. I
Stanley's
think we have a high level of confidence. And I might add as well, it didn't come out really in the press conference, but it certainly is in the decision, is the safety side of it. The fact that the longer runway contributes to the safety of the airport, and it was with intention that we brought the ops staff, the operations staff at Tweed.
Are you concerned about effects on the wetlands? I know that some people there are.
Well, I think we've talked about, we've actually reached out to CERCA about this, the state agency that looks at the climate change side of it. by having a capital investment at the airport, it allows us to do and make investments in the public infrastructure that supports the entire neighborhood. So much like back in 2008, 2009, 10, that project, just for the runway safety areas, allowed us to work on Morris Creek, create more wetlands, improve the tide gates, and every day the ops staff at Tweed maintains those tide gates for the entire neighborhood, not just the airport.
And Mayor Harp, just to go back to the politics, you did give a crucial early endorsement to Ned Lamont when he ran for governor. You had that announcement at Tweed New Haven Airport, and you basically said New Haven's going to be behind you if you come through us for the airport. Is it time for him to deliver?
Well, I'm really hoping so, and I know that our state senators and state reps are waiting for that financial benefit package that he has promised, and so we're hoping that it's something that they can negotiate and get delivered in this special session.
Oh, you want it that quick?
Well, I think it's important that we do get
Do
it
we
as
have a
quick as possible.
do we have a specific package for them to vote on?
Well, according to Senator Looney, that package was being developed by the governor's office, which is why I mentioned it. So
This is the governor's office doesn't always get the things as promptly as you need to get something passed, like tolls.
I'm thinking that in this case, the governor's office won't let us down.
All right. And the newly all-male governor's office. You see, they made some staff changes recently. It is now a man cave.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, they moved the women out and brought the men up. Stanley Zarnock said, looking forward to being able to fly direct to Chicago without having to drive to LaGuardia or Westchester. Thank you, Stanley, for weighing in. Actually, one thing I found hopeful about the changes is they brought Jonathan Harris out of the dungeon. Jonathan Harris is the most informed person in the Lamont administration about how every aspect of government works. He was a state senator. He ran a state agency. He was a mayor. He was a lobbyist. For some reason, when they blew everything with the tolls, they didn't ask him what was going on. They had the deputies something or other in the floor below the basement. They have now brought him up to be a top aide on how to work with the legislature. So that'll be, that's my 2 cents. All right, you listen to Mayor Monday and Mike Piscatelli's in the house. Mike, the big announcement last week, and I had so much fun at that event you had. Instead of having a press conference where everyone shouts one question and tries to make it look good for TV, you brought in reporters to talk for a while with a developer who is investing over $250 million, well, of other people's money, building in New Haven, and he has heeded your call to revive the Coliseum site project. That's the project to build a mixed-use group of apartments, storefronts, open space, maybe offices, but not necessarily still a hotel, where the New Haven Coliseum used to be. How did you land him, and what happens next? And we're talking, of course, about Spinnaker Realty.
I appreciate you acknowledging the different way we rolled it out.
It was great because it was like this intelligent conversation, and we had questions answered. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of a 2-part rollout, and really no visuals yet to stand behind, and wouldn't be necessarily fair even to the community to stand behind it just yet because there's quite a bit of work to do on relaunch.
And I'm going to ask you to get close to the mic.
In September, we're going to do a series of community conversations to help along the design, the land use parameters, what the group, so this new consortium is Spinnaker and the FIBR group. They are
2
taking
second
over
and
the
third generation
rights.
family development companies. That was kind of interesting to see. Yeah.
People that value place, so placemaking. Spinnaker has been involved in some of the largest city projects here in Connecticut. People also saw the story about Hartford. He talked a little bit about, Clay Fowler talked a little bit about that urban focus.
He's the Spinnaker guy, and he's saying where other developers like his are going to the biggest cities, he's focusing on Connecticut cities for the most part, although he did Portland, Oregon. And he believes small cities are having a moment. And he's done the Audubon Square project, already moving people in. He gets it done fast. And now that you got the lawsuits out of the way for Rooster Square doing 200 units, he's ready to build the Hotel Hilton Art Garden Inn at Orange and Elm.
Yep, so we're looking forward to step 2 coming out this September, and it's a real good opportunity for the community to reattach to a project. As we mentioned in the room, it is remarkable how quickly, generationally, people are less and less familiar with the Coliseum as a building.
And Mike kind of
put
one of your young age on the spot.
Time to catch up.
Do you remember the Coliseum and the guy didn't? Yeah, it was funny.
Well, their intern, right? Their intern didn't know the Coliseum is a building.
So one thing you do when you're in government is that you try to move forward projects you inherit. And development projects, as Mike Piscatelli knows so much better than I do, are so complicated. And you have an idea that seems simple, and you have to get so many approvals and so many reports in it, unforeseen problems and cost overruns. And you found a way to get the in the Hill, the 11.6 acres by the Yale Medical School, a project that didn't happen forever, for 25 years. You got it done, and partly by figuring out how not to rearrange a street. That you didn't have to have every street be uniform, so you could save all this problem with. And they also found the right developer. You inherited the Coliseum project that some people felt was inherently flawed. I know one person who bid on it said they gave the job to someone who built everything the neighborhood wanted without any thinking about how you can get money to fund it. I'm not asking you to say that, because one thing I like about you guys is you don't trash people come before you or second guess them. What have you learned from this project and the frustrations of 6 years of, so many things are moving fast. You guys have a great record of getting stuff moving. You inherited a project that got stuck for 6 years. Now you got it restarted. What did we learn from that? Either Mayor Harp or Mike.
Well, why don't we start with Hill to Downtown? You mentioned it, and I think it's fair to say the level of community engagement on that project, the work that our LCI team, Serena, and the neighborhood specialists did to lay the groundwork to relaunch it was very, very important. It gave us a basis to take something to move forward. I thought that was very instructive for what we're doing now.
And I think the fact that the strong leadership on the Board of Alders worked as well in that neighborhood and helped to bring everybody in the neighborhood together to come up with a plan and a community benefit that was important to the neighborhood. And we've seen that in other areas as well, because even as quickly as we hope that the Neuroscience Center will move forward, it really required, yes, us doing the technical work.
Right, that's an example. It wasn't controversial because you had everyone in the room beforehand.
Right, yeah.
That's the one on George Street. But I would argue that the Coliseum project did not lack for public input. The criticism is that a deal was struck with someone who built everything everybody in the neighborhood said they wanted, but then he could never get financing for. Do you think that was true? Because now you brought in someone who didn't do everything you wanted. He said, we did a study, and I can't promise you a hotel because I might not be able to get the money for a big enough conference center. So do you think that sometimes you have to hear what everybody says, but then be a little more realistic when you negotiate?
Every project's a little bit different, and the lookbacks are always so complicated. On this one, I think there were a number of factors that really slowed progress down. Certainly making real efforts to relocate those utility lines.
Right.
So it's got really big utility lines through the back end of the site.
And do you still have to do that, or is that no longer necessary without the hotel?
So the site will be smaller, be the original 4.5 acres, and the utility lines will likely stay in place. That plus trying to align it with the public infrastructure of Downtown Crossing.
And that's where we've gradually been
right.
getting rid of that mini highway to nowhere and connecting the neighborhoods back together.
Those are probably, if someone were to write a book on the whole thing, those were two big challenges that we faced going forward. But I think to your point about having the right land use plan and the terms for new development, that's what really allows Spinnaker to move in here and now relaunch that with the community, because the strength of a mixed-use project and some density at that site makes a lot of sense.
And so I will correct my story. I was still using 5.5 acres. And at the conversation we had, Clay Fowler thought it might still be in the neighborhood of $400 million project, although we said we can't know for sure because so much is left to plan. But then I think it was the city's press release said $130 million. That's a big different number. Do you know which number is closer?
The forecast for the phase one improvements is 122 to 130.
Oh, so that was phase one versus the whole project.
Was, giving a sense for is this entire site to get it right is about a $400 million investment.
Well, Ben Berkowitz is someone who runs a company that can look out your window and see the site that has stayed empty for so long. It's such a great opportunity. Although we should mention how much stuff is being built right around it, including all that development right over the train tracks, Wooster Square, which I think if they can hold out to Cafe Night all that time, it's going to be wildly packed every night pretty soon. Everybody's close. What's your take on what you've seen happen with the Coliseum site?
I think it's been, our office located at Chaplin State when there was a hole in the ground on the Schartenberg lot. So there was no 360 State when we moved there. And I think the most recent development apartment development was the Smoothie Building. So I think from our perspective, it's been fascinating to watch the neighborhood grow up around us, including right now on our existing block with this transfer of the 9th Square, and that seems really, really positive. I'm enthusiastic
Irv
about
Pinsky writes in, and he's a guy who doesn't hold back when he doesn't like something. New Haven looks much better than I've ever seen it. The homicide rate is way down. I hope the people are happier now. Bless this town. I will second Irv's comment. Thank you, Irv, for that comment. Mike Piscatella, you came in a little late, but we want to get you on this one too. Hotel Duncan. One of the it's being changed into University something or other. What's it going to be?
Graduate.
The graduate side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they should play like Dustin Hoffman and Bancroft the first night in the lobby. They
People
should have
don't know
showing.
the Coliseum building. You're going to go that far back.
They should have a room that's like the Mrs. Robinson suite. Anyway, so it is moving ahead, but obviously they've been at odds for something we who aren't privy to private conversations can't figure out for the life of us, which is that if you want to build a hotel in New Haven, you need to agree to have a union. Allegedly, this developer said, I'm happy to have a union with Unite Here, the union that controls our legislature, but they never came to terms for whatever reason, and now the zoning board has been holding up part of the plans for that development. They won't let them get their first floor license to have a bar there. They took us to court. The city was in this odd position where the city government kind of agreed with the developer, but had to defend the zoning board, which was controlled by Unite Here. But you reached a deal to have it move forward. But then last week, the key vote walked out of the room. You ever remember some of these from your board? Remember people sometimes walk out of the room when there was a key vote? So he walked out of the room, so there was no longer a quorum, which means that for months now, the zoning board can't approve the agreement that was reached in court to have that part of the project move forward. What's going on, and what does that mean for the possibility of having screenings of Anne Bancroft on Chapel Street?
So a couple of observations. First, I think you properly framed our lane is on the land use and zoning side as opposed to the other lanes. There is settlement discussions underway between the city and the applicant, and it don't think I'm speaking too far out of school to say it largely focuses on the issues that were raised at the hearing about parking and making sure the valet and all of that were organized. And the staff would like to share that with the BZA. For those that
Zoning
didn't see
board.
the story, we're actually short a couple of members on the BZA, so you need all 4 members to be there. I thought it was the commentary on the Independent was a little rough on Mr. Paolillo. I did talk to him afterwards, and I got a sense that it was, had a lot to do with the noticing as well. It was, the settlement has been coming together. The first notice that went out from our staff did not include a discussion or executive summary. It was only the second notice, and he didn't want to be caught in a place where he didn't have any backup material, organized stuff like that. And I'll take him at his word that that was the case. And we're hopeful to get the board back together soon so that.
So you're not going to wait 2 months? You're hoping to have a special meeting?
The Office of Corporation Counsel is working on it. But again, we're short a couple of members, so it's hard to pull everyone.
Well, Mayor Harp, that's your lane. Are you naming anyone else to the zoning board?
Well, we're going to take a look at it, but I think the most recent charter change also gives the alders the ability to appoint members as well.
Oh, they can appoint them.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you pick someone, you have to wait a couple of months for the Board of Alders to confirm them.
Right. It usually takes a while for that to happen. So it takes about 3 months to get somebody on a board.
Wow. Ooh. And then we saw the consequences. Also, for development, there's going to be a big project. There was not a press conference for this. The Project Venus is going to be a Vegas-style, all night till 6 a.m, strip club entertainment venue near the old Farnham Courts and the homeless shelter and Johnson Square Park. It got approval last week to have a liquor license from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. My question is, when we have these kind of institutions, are we doing it right to concentrate them in one part of town? Like some people say we just shouldn't have them. Some people that say that's not legal, and we allowed to have. We're not a church; we're a city. Other people say we can't have them near kids, a block away in a park. Other people say, then where are you going to put them? Did that come through your office at all? There's no city subsidy, so it's not like Mike Piscatelli had to review their plans and entice them. But did you have any thoughts about that?
There's a significant body of case law concerning some of these land uses. On one end, the religious uses, and on the other end, some of the more adult entertainment uses.
Another kind of
By
religion.
and large, the case law leads to you cannot have an outright exclusion whereby your community does not allow a process for some of these uses that are allowed under the Constitution, right? So in this particular case, this is an area that is still zoned industrial, probably one of the very few areas in the city
That's
where
really interesting because
you
that
don't even have a pathway to do something.
it's zoned industrial, and you've done such a good job of encouraging newer housing there. I mean, for decades we had the clock factory, huge complex, empty. You got it remediated, and now we're going to have housing there. We're going to have 2 other housing developments right nearby. How do you deal in a job like yours when the reality on the ground changes so much faster than the zoning?
I think it's to your point earlier, or maybe to Bitsy's point. It's a city, so it'll be constantly evolving. No zoning tool in and of itself is going to be the answer to it. You were probably, I think the Independent covered the Lawrence Street matter,
Mhm.
where you had an investor looking to add 2 or 3 units in a 2-family home, and the tensions were everywhere around that. But that would be entirely consistent with what we were talking about at the Affordable Housing Task Force, which was to add that very density in the neighborhoods. So it'll be an evolving conversation next year about how best to get that done.
I do think you have one of the most fun jobs in New Haven. I
You
bet
have the most fun job in
No,
New
I'll
Haven.
bet that sometimes when you go home at night and people beat up on you all day, it doesn't feel like the most fun job in New Haven. But just think of that instinct thing you were just talking about.
Yeah.
The biggest issues facing us about how do we have affordable housing in a city, but have it still be a nice place to live? How do we change? Because we have to change and evolve in a way that respects everyone. And I think you do it very well. So I think
It's a real privilege, and the mayor and the board of alders have given us an opportunity to work on really good stuff. So we take it very seriously.
all right, Mayor Harp, anything else to add?
No, I'm just really proud of the staff that works for us and how our city's growing and developing and really driving the economy of the state.
And I haven't thrown the campaign questions at you because it's not mainly a campaign story.
Right?
But there is a convention this week nominating.
Mm-hmm.
You're running for mayor again.
Yes,
If you don't get the nomination, will you run in a primary?
I will.
And if you don't win a primary, would you run in the general?
I will not.
All right. Well, that was straightforward. All
Mhm.
right. All right. Ben Berkowitz, thanks for joining us on
Thanks for
being in
having
the
me.
sanctum here, Mayor Monday.
My brother was watching via Instagram Live. He'd like to see the New Haven Nighthawks come back. So if we can arrange that.
That's the always thing about a changing city
Yeah.
because sports wasn't working.
I mean, you could pick.
Let's
What
just
if
be
we do
honest.
like a Rockefeller Center in the middle of this complex where they just host Nighthawks fights? I mean, that
Ooh.
would be. I mean, games.
Games.
Sorry. Games. Maybe bring in the dirt bikes instead. You know,
There
the
you go.
monster
Because Mayor
trucks.
Harper's saying she wants a safe place
That's
where they
it.
can rock 'em,
That's
sock
it.
'em, dirt bikes. All right. Mike Piscatelli, thanks for coming back in again.
Thanks so much.
We hope to have you often. And Mayor Harp, thanks for your weekly checkup. I hope everybody, and thanks for the questions. And just the people checking in, I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody who was checking in, like Carlton Highsmith, Sarah Miller, Anna Mariotti, Gabby Mariaio, Helen Ward, Michael Farina, Char Badger. Thanks everyone for checking in. We do take attendance. So you're okay for your report card for this week. Thanks for Gateway Community College and Birch and Moses BC for providing financial support for today's program. Sam Hadelman doing the magic behind the scenes, which is why your brother saw it on Instagram. He does all the social media. Harry Droz is out for his birthday getting a tattoo, and we hope he's having a great day. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.